Hey guys, it's Lauren, and today's video is going to be a sequel to my unique 3D transitions video. Let's get right into it. So the first transition we're going to do is this 90-degree pop-up mask. Before we begin, please make sure to enable your motion blur, enable it on both of your clips, and also make sure to enable 3D. So for this, you're going to need 2 clips, and you want the one on the bottom to last throughout the duration of both clips. So starting with this second clip, we are going to create a mask. For this, we are going to use the rotobrushing tool. So just double click on your display and color in whatever you want to be masked. Then change your mask feather to around 40. X out of this layer and go back to your selection tool. Now starting with this bottom clip, hit R on your keyboard to go to rotation, drag your current time indicator to the very first frame of your second clip, so right here, and add a keyframe for X rotation. Keep this at 0 degrees. Hit O on your keyboard to go to the end of the clip, and change this value to -90. Highlight both of your keyframes, right click on one of them, go to Keyframe Assistant and click on Easy Ease. Then go to your graph editor. I like to edit 3D transitions using speed graph, so if your graph doesn't look like mine, just click here and click on Edit Speed Graph. We are going to be dragging this to the left, so just follow my graph. Now let's move on to this second clip. So primarily hit P on your keyboard to go to position. At the very beginning of your clip, add a keyframe and keep it at its original values. Then hit O on your keyboard to go to the end of the clip, and start decreasing the second value right here until your mask picture is basically laying on top of your first picture. So this tan line right here represents your first picture, so you want this second picture to be resting on top of it like such. Then easy ease your keyframes, and follow my graph. Now just drag the second keyframe towards the middle of your clip. Still being clicked on the second clip, hit R on your keyboard to go to rotation. At the very beginning, add a keyframe for orientation and make the last value 200 degrees. Then at the end of your clip, bring this third value back to 0 and change your second value to 270. Make sure you're still clicked on the second clip and go to Layer, New, Null Object. Make sure to enable 3D on this Null Object layer. Then highlight your clips minus the Null Object layer. Hold down on one of these little spirals. Drag it towards the Null Object layer. Then let go. And as you can see, they're both connected to the Null Object layer. Now drag your time indicator to the very first frame of your second clip, so right here again. Make sure you're clicked on the Null Object layer and hit R on your keyboard. Add a keyframe for Y rotation and keep it at 0 degrees. Drag your time indicator towards the end of both of your clips and change your Y rotation to 90 degrees. Now, still being clicked on the Null Object layer, hit S on your keyboard to go to scale. At the very beginning, add a keyframe and keep it at 100. Then drag your time indicator towards the end of the clips and decrease this to around 70. Lastly, still being clicked on the Null Object layer, hit P on your keyboard to go to position. Drag your time indicator back towards the beginning. Add your first keyframe and keep it at its original values. Then drag your time indicator towards the end of the clips. Then start increasing this second value until your photos are in the center. And this is what it should look like. Next, we're gonna do this cube to a slide down transition. Just like before, you wanna make sure your motion blur and 3D are both enabled. And for this, you're gonna want 2 clips arranged as such, and the first one should be a little bit longer than the second one. So primarily, I'm going to do a slide down transition between these 2 clips. And for this first clip, you wanna start the slide down towards the middle of the clip. Since this is a simple transition, I'm just gonna speed through this part. Now making sure you're clicked on the second clip, go up to Layer, New, Solid, and I'm just going to keep my color as black. Go up to your rectangle masking tool, and you want to create a square mask that leaves a thin border around the edge. So just mask it like this. Then down here, click on Inverted, and it should look like this. Now go back to your selection tool. Hit Shift-Command-D on your keyboard to split the solid layer and hit Delete to delete the excess. Then highlight all of your clips, right-click on one of them, go to Pre-Compose, and make sure you're clicked on this circle and this square. Now that it's pre-composed, make sure to re-enable motion blur and 3D on your clip. Then, using Command D, make 5 copies of your clip so you have 6 in total. Now switch from active camera to custom view 1. So starting from the top down, I'm going to use these two clips to form the top and bottom of my cube. So I'm just going to hit R on my keyboard to go to rotation. I'm going to change the X rotation to -90. Make sure you have snapping enabled, and I'm just going to drag it to the top until it snaps in place. For the one below it, I'm going to hit R again. I'm going to change the X rotation again to -90, and I'm just going to drag it to the bottom of the cube this time. For our next two clips, we're going to do the sides of the cube. So for this, again, hit R on your keyboard, but this time we're going to change the Y rotation to -90 and just drag that into place on the side. For the clip below it, again, hit R on your keyboard and change the Y rotation to -90, then drag it into place on the other side. Now for our next clip, we are going to simply drag it backwards until it snaps into the other side of the cube. And lastly, this very bottom clip is functioning as the face of our cube, so we don't need to change it. Now, make sure you're clicked on the clip at the top and go to Layer, New, Null Object. Make sure to enable 3D on your null object layer, and then connect all your photos to the layer. Click on your null layer and hit A on your keyboard to go to anchor point, and we want this little thing to land right here on this intersection. To do so, increase this third value to 540, and it should land right here. Now I'm going to go back to active camera. Make sure you're still clicked on the null object layer and hit S on your keyboard to go to scale. At the very beginning of my layer, I'm going to add a keyframe and change the scale to 40. Then drag your time indicator towards the middle of your clips and bring your scale to around 73. Now I'm going to hit R on my keyboard to go to the rotation values. At the very beginning, I'm going to add two keyframes, one for X rotation and one for Y rotation. I'm going to increase my X rotation to around 120 and decrease my Y rotation to around -80. Then again, I'm going to drag my time indicator towards the middle of my clips, and I'm going to bring these values back to 0. And I'm going to switch back to speed graph because again, I like to manipulate 3D using speed graph. And I'm going to push these to the left, but not all the way to the left. We want there to still be a little bit of a curve. Just follow my graphs. And then I'm going to pre-compose everything together, the null object layer and the clips. Now click on your clip and hit S on your keyboard to go to scale and change the scale to 80. Then in Effects and Presets, look up Motion Tile and add that to your clip. At the very beginning, add two keyframes, one for output width and one for output height, and keep these both at 100. Then drag your time indicator to the very first frame of your second clip and change both of these values to 130. Now hit U on your keyboard to view your keyframes and easy ease all of them. And this is what it should look like. Now we're going to do a Polaroid swing transition. Before we begin, please download the Polaroid PNG that I've provided in the description in the form of a mega link. So for this, you're going to need two clips, and you want the one on the bottom to last throughout the duration of both clips. So for both, I'm just going to hit S on my keyboard and change the scale to 60. Then I'm going to drag the Polaroid PNG into my project. I'm going to drag it so it's on top of our first clip, and I'm just going to drag it forward and cut it so it matches the length of my first clip. Now I'm just going to increase the scale of the Polaroid so it matches my clip, and I'm going to drag it down a little bit. Now I'm going to hit Command-C to copy the Polaroid picture, and I'm going to paste it on top of my second clip. Then I'm going to trim it to match the duration of my second clip. Now you want to pre-compose each clip with its respective Polaroid picture. Now change the scale of both of your new pre-composed clips to 80. Then drag both of your pre-composed layers down a little bit. Then make sure you're clicked on the first clip and go to Layer, New, Solid, and make sure your color is white. Drag this so that it's below your first clip so it's at the very bottom. Then hold down on this little square right here and drag it to the left to make it thinner. Then just drag it up a little bit so you can't see it at the bottom. I'm going to copy this solid layer and paste it on top of my first clip so that it's below my second clip, and I'm just going to trim it so it starts when the second clip starts. Then I'm going to highlight all of my clips, I'm going to drag my current time indicator to the very end, and I'm going to hit Shift-Command-D and delete the excess of my solid layers. Then, like I did last time, I'm going to pre-compose my clips with their respective solid layer. Now enable Motion Blur and 3D on both of your clips, and change from active camera to custom view 1. So drag your time indicator to where your second clip comes into view and hit R on your keyboard. Then change the X rotation to 110. Then drag it upwards so that the two white solids kind of connect at the top. Once they're aligned, change from Custom View 1 back to Active Camera. Make sure you're still clicked on the top clip and go to Layer, New, Null Object. Trim off the excess of the null object layer. Make sure to enable 3D on the layer, and then connect both clips to the layer. Now make sure you're clicked on the null object layer and hit A on your keyboard to go to anchor point, and change this third value to 400. Then hit R on your keyboard to go to rotation, and drag your time indicator to the very beginning of the layer. Here you're going to add a keyframe for X rotation and keep it at 0. Then drag your time indicator to the very first frame of your second clip, and change this to -50. Then drag your time indicator towards the end of the layer, and bring this to -100. After you've done this, for your first graph, you want to hold down on this little yellow square and then drag it upward a little bit. Now drag your time indicator right where this middle keyframe is, hit P on your keyboard to go to position, and add a keyframe. Then decrease your second value from 540 to 400. Then drag your time indicator towards the end of the null object layer, and decrease this to around 200. Lastly, hit S on your keyboard to go to scale. Make sure your time indicator is still right here on the first frame of your second clip, and add a keyframe for scale. Keep this at 100. Then drag your time indicator towards the end of the layer, and change your scale to around 300. I'm going to go to Layer, New, Solid. I'm going to change the color to like a light pink. And I'm just going to drag the solid layer to the very bottom of all my clips for a background. Also make sure to trim off the excess. Last step, make sure you're clicked on the null object layer and go to Layer, New, Light, and make sure the light type is parallel. And this is what it should look like. Lastly, we're going to do this paint easel with 3D angling. So for this, you're going to need 2 clips and you want them arranged as such. And what we're first going to do is an ink splatter transition. So please download this ink overlay that I've provided in the description in the form of a mega link and drag that into your timeline. I'm going to increase the scale to make it fit into my composition. And I'm just going to drag it forward a little bit so the beginning of the ink overlay and our second clip match up. Then I'm just going to trim off and delete the excess. Right-click on your ink overlay and go to Time and click on Enable Time Remapping. There should already be a keyframe at the beginning. Then hit O on your keyboard to go to the end of the clip, and then just increase your time until the ink has taken up the entire screen. Then click on Toggle Switches and Modes, and for your second clip, which is the clip below the ink overlay, change this from None to Luma Matte. I'm going to click on Toggle Switches and Modes again to get back to my original format, and I'm going to pre-compose all these clips together. Now I'm just going to decrease the scale of this clip to around 70. And now please go back to the description and download the rough edges overlay that I provided in the form of a mega link. Drag that into your timeline. First, I'm just going to increase the scale of this overlay. Then I'm going to click on this little chain to separate these 2 scale values. And I'm going to start decreasing the second one so it fits the frame of my clip. Then click on Toggle Switches and Modes again. And for your pre-composed clip, change it from None to again Luma Matte. Then using these little squares, just keep adjusting the scale of your rough edges overlay until it fits your clip like so. Trim off the excess and delete, and now pre-compose these 2 clips together. Once again, click out of Toggle Switches Modes. Now in Effects and Presets, look up CC Page Turn and add that to your clip. Change it from bottom right corner to top right corner. Then at the very beginning of your clip, add a keyframe for filled position, and then just drag this little dot to the bottom left corner of your clip. Drag your time indicator towards the middle of the clip, and then just drag this dot all the way to the top right corner of your clip. Hit U on your keyboard to view your keyframes, and easy ease them. Now for the last time, please go to my description and download these 2 things. This PNG of this easel, and this image of a kind of artsy background. Drag both of these into your project. Primarily drag the background clip to the very bottom of your timeline, then drag the PNG of the easel between these 2. So it should be pre-composed clip, easel, background. Highlight both of these photos to trim and delete the excess. Then I'm just going to increase the scale of the background so it fits the frame of my composition. Then I'm going to decrease the scale of the paint easel a little bit. And then I'm going to decrease the scale of our pre-composed clip and then drag it so it lies atop the paint easel. To both the pre-composed clip and the easel, I'm going to add an effect called Drop Shadow. So in Effects and Presets, look up Drop Shadow. And first, I'm just going to add it to my pre-composed clip. Increase the distance to 30 and the softness to 30 as well. Click on where it says Drop Shadow and hit Command-C to copy the effect. Then click on the photo of your paint easel and hit Command V to paste it in. Now click on the clip of your background and go to Layer, New, Solid, and I'm going to change the color to black. Trim it to fit the length of all of your clips. Then go to your rectangle masking tool. Create a small square mask, then carrot down on mask, click on shape, and change it from rectangle to ellipse. Go back to your selection tool, and now just pull these little circles down to create a more ovular shape. It doesn't have to be perfect, you just want the general shape. Now increase your mask feather to around 150. Then hit T on your keyboard to go to opacity, and change the opacity to around 50. Then hit P on your keyboard to go to position, and start increasing the second value so that this solid layer kind of looks like a shadow. Now apply motion blur and 3D to all of your clips. Click on the pre-composed clip that's on top and go to Layer, New, Null Object, trim your Null Object layer, and then connect all of your clips to your Null Object layer. And make sure to apply 3D to the Null Object layer. So I'm just going to carrot down on Transform on the Null Object layer because we're going to need to use a ton of these. And first we're going to work with the scale. So at the very beginning of the Null Object layer, add a keyframe for scale and change it to around 200. Then drag your time indicator towards the middle of the clip and bring the scale back to 100. Then drag your time indicator towards the end of the clip and bring your scale to around 150. And I'm just going to click on my first keyframe and go to the graph editor because I'm only going to adjust this curve. Just follow my graph. Now go back to the beginning of your clip and add a keyframe for X rotation and Y rotation and make both of these values around 20. Then drag your time indicator towards the end of the clip and change both of these values to around -15. Lastly, drag your time indicator to where this middle keyframe is for scale and add a keyframe for position. For this very first keyframe, just keep it at its original values, then drag your time indicator towards the end of the clip and increase the second value so that your photos are in the center of your composition. Lastly, make sure you're still clicked on this Null Object layer and go to Layer, New, Light. Make sure the light type is parallel. And this is what it should look like. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if you like this video, please comment down below so I can do a part 3. Bye guys!